Good morning, guys. This is my prediction video for Josh Taylor versus Jose Ramirez. I have recorded this about 4 times. This fight is a tricky one. I'm really trying to give a true breakdown of this fight and do it justice and come up with a prediction. So yeah, here's attempt number 4. This fight will take place tomorrow in sunny Las Vegas, which is making me very jealous because I'm stuck here in the cold, wet and windy UK. This fight's for the Undisputed 140-pound title, so there's a lot at stake. It's all the marbles, and should be a good fight. I just watched G-Man Boxing's pre-fight breakdown and prediction of this fight, and if you haven't seen it, which I'm sure most of you guys have if you're watching my videos, you should go and check it out. It's a very comprehensive breakdown, and it's hopefully I can add something worth listening to in my breakdown. G-Man really did leave no stone unturned, but with this fight I feel like I have a good idea of what both fighters offer, even though I've seen more of Josh Taylor over the years. I saw more of him as an amateur and as a pro. Ramirez, though, I've seen pretty much most of his top level fights, so I feel like I have a good idea of what he brings to the table. Just a basic overview of each fighter. I think Josh Taylor is the bigger guy, the more skilled guy, and the more talented. Probably has better athleticism as well. But Jose Ramirez isn't overmatched, he's not outmatched, if you pardon the pun, in this fight, because he has a lot of energy. He does have some skills, and he has like a ruggedness, he's very rough and ready, he's very game, and he has a style that I believe really can give anyone trouble, just based on the sheer tenacity of it and activity. Josh Taylor, well, firstly, both guys had a very similar level of amateur career. I think they actually competed at a lot of the same amateur tournaments, like the Olympics and the World Championships, and so I feel like these are two very evenly matched fighters, which really does have the potential to turn into a fight of the year kind of fight, which would be very fitting, seeing as it's for the Undisputed title. But with both guys, I feel like they're both very tenacious, from a psychological point of view, and they enjoy inflicting a lot of damage on their opponents. But the way they go about it, I believe, is a little bit different. Ramirez is an orthodox. I think he's the shorter of the two. Both guys are listed at 5'10", but in the promo and the press conferences and stuff like that, he seems to be a good 2 inches shorter than Josh Taylor, who is also, listed at 5'10", but I think he's a legitimate 5'10". Josh Taylor is a southpaw, but I don't think he's the hardest southpaw to fight. Don't get me wrong, he's a hard person to fight, but as a southpaw, I don't think he makes the most of that. I don't want to say advantage, but that aspect of his boxing. I have to be honest. Whenever I've watched Jose Ramirez, I've always been left wanting a little bit. I always watch him, and I always, you can see the energy he has. You can see the roughness, which is effective. But in his last fight against Victor Postol, he seemed to struggle at long range and didn't look great for my money. But I think it's worth considering that, in my opinion, Victor Postol is a better long range boxer than Josh Taylor. Josh Taylor, even though he's a big guy, he's got a big frame and a lot of height for the weight, he doesn't maximize his long range boxing. He kind of relies on this probing jab, which is good. That's a key function of the lead hand in boxing, but he doesn't really use it for much else. He doesn't turn over any power shots, any power jabs, any right crosses. He kind of just relies on that probing shot, which you can set up things, but he sets up his left hand pretty nicely off of it. But you just want to see boxers get the most out of their assets and have as many tools as they can available. But on that note, he does have a wide array of punches, like hooks, uppercuts, body shots, and he's able to get a lot of venom and like a decent amount of power. They're very stinging shots by the looks of them. But that's another aspect where I feel hasn't been maximized in Josh Taylor is his punching power. Now he can punch, don't get me wrong, but I feel like his biomechanics and his punch technique, they don't get all the power available. I feel like a lot of the time he doesn't turn over his shots fully. It's quite frustrating to see, especially on the pads as well, when he's been on the pads with Shane McGuigan, his former trainer, and Ben Davison, his current trainer. They seem to have overlooked that Josh Taylor shortcuts his technique a little bit, and as such, or in turn, his power isn't as good as it could be, in my opinion. But then, nevertheless, he's able to really dig in and get these very short, compact shots for such a tall guy. He can get them in up close and at mid range, and do a lot of damage. Jose Ramirez, on the other hand, I feel like he's a little bit wider up close, despite being a shorter guy. There's a bit more tell in his punches, and so Josh Taylor might be able to punch in between Jose Ramirez. Jose Ramirez, he has decent head movement. He's able to get himself off the center line pretty decently, but he's not really able to weave his offense into those defensive maneuvers. Not like a Regis Prograis, who of course Josh Taylor beat. Personally, I thought Prograis won that fight by 1 or 2 rounds. But Prograis is a different style. He's even more fluid than Taylor is, in my opinion. And he bobs and weaves and he slips, and he's able to weave in his straight shots and his body shots and his all his power shots, and he very proficient at landing. And for my money, he's a bigger puncher than Jose Ramirez. Punch for punch, one punch power. But Ramirez, he's able to, say from long range, he's able to close the distance quite quickly, and he gathers a lot of forward momentum. And before you know it, a lot of his opponents are against the ropes, and then he wails away, and he doubles up especially on the left side. So with his left hand, he's able to go quite proficiently from body to head and chain together a lot of hooks and body shots. So that being said, I believe that Josh Taylor is more talented, has more skill, has better athleticism, but maybe he's not as good at long range, but makes up for it with his array of punches at mid and close range. Whereas Ramirez is always game, high energy, has very consistent pace throughout fights, from what I've seen. A little bit wide on his shots, but he has good power. Able to double up with his left hand, which I think is particularly effective against southpaw, seeing as their right side is their lead side, and the liver is on that side as well. So if that shot lands on the liver, it can be quite debilitating. In terms of tactics, seen as Ramirez is able to, have these very direct forward assaults, where he's coming in the straight line but really forcing his opponent back. Josh Taylor will probably want to move laterally, but he's going to want to mix in the offense with that, because Jose Ramirez strikes me as the kind of guy who you really can't afford to just back off against, even if you are moving laterally, because he will kind of wing a shot over and try and catch you that way. And maybe it's not the most effective tactic, but in boxing you do get hit, you know, especially in even matchups like this, you know. So I thought Josh Taylor's going to have to sting, you know, really hit Ramirez hard, but then not hang around, you know, not admire his work and then move off, which, look, don't get me wrong, that's arguably, you know, what everyone should do in any boxing match ever, because it is hit and don't get hit at the end of the day. But Josh Taylor, he can't afford to let Ramirez gather that forward momentum. So he's going to, maybe, if he does hold his feet, he'll probably want to do it in spots and try and punch in between Ramirez and then move off straight away. Do I believe he can do that? Yes, I do. Do I believe he can do it with good biomechanics to keep himself safe and be effective? That is the question, I believe, because I've seen, say, Ben Davison, who is Josh Taylor's trainer, his current trainer, and also works with Billy Joe Saunders. There is pad work that you can find of Ben Davison and Billy Joe Saunders, and they're doing a similar movement to that, where Ben Davison holding the pads will advance onto Billy Joe Saunders, and then Saunders will land a right hook and spin off simultaneously. Now that's a fairly common maneuver, but it's one that a lot of people do with very shaky biomechanics, and as such, Billy Joe Saunders was doing it with not the best biomechanics, so it limited the power on that shot, as well as putting Saunders in a position where he can't really do too much afterwards, which, if you've listened to any of my other videos, positioning, because boxing is a positional battle, and you're positioning an effective positional change, or an effective position, is one that allows you to be in a good position at the conclusion of the current one. You know, at the conclusion of the current movement, you should be able to do X, Y, Z afterwards and do it effectively. But the position that Saunders was in after that drill was, you know, he was kind of lost in the ring, you know. He'd need a second to get into an effective position. So if that technique has been drilled into Taylor in this fight, I feel like you may see him come unstuck, because Ramirez is just on you, you know, constantly, has very consistent pace, very high energy, and Josh Taylor can't afford to be out of position in any part of the ring. So he's going to have to maintain a good construct and good position biomechanics. And can he do that? I believe for the most part he can. I think my gut is just telling me that Josh Taylor wins this one by UD 1 or 2 rounds, you know, so a close one. But I just feel like he has a bit more fluidity and a bit more talent, and can maybe land some cleaner shots that just maybe catch the judge's eyes, and, you know, they give him the round, even though it's a very close one. That is a point to bring up, though, because of course this fight is taking place in Las Vegas. Correct me if I'm wrong, but is Ramirez a native of California? So it's not necessarily his hometown, but of course he's the US fighter. G-Man spoke about the financial aspect of this fight. You know, who's the ticket seller, who's the easier man to market. He made a good point about how the fans in attendance will most likely be Ramirez fans, which I think is likely. Is any particular guy easier to market? I imagine, because the fight's in America, marketing Ramirez will obviously be an incentive for the fight to go his way. But I don't think he's that much of a, you know, a name for people for that incentive to be strong enough. So I do think that the decision in this fight will be a legitimate decision. It's really sad that we have to always consider these things, like the politics in boxing, but it is what it is. It does kind of tar the whole boxing experience, but hey, what are you going to do? Corruption exists, you know. in all walks of life, you know, especially government politics, but we won't get into that. But anyway, I feel like Josh Taylor will do enough to win this. Be a very close fight, very tough fight for both guys. Just feel like Josh Taylor's talent and his skill advantage will shine a bit, even if it's, you know, flashes in the round that just may mean the judges give him the round. I feel like it will add up towards the end of the fight, and it will be, you know, Josh Taylor will win by about 2 rounds UD. So yeah, 4th attempt, I think pretty comprehensive. I don't think I have anything more to talk about in this fight. If you want to talk about this fight and discuss it in the comments, you know, leave me one. I'll be sure to get back to you. You know, thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever you feel this video deserves. If you like the channel, why not subscribe? So yeah, thanks for listening, guys, and hopefully it's a good fight.